A lot of people are talking about this interview that Robert Smith, who is, what is he, the chairman of the British Boxing Board of Control, did on Talk Sport with Simon Jordan. Now, first of all, Robert Smith did this interview, I think, to strike back at Eddie Hearn in several ways. One, Robert Smith very rarely does video interviews, for one. So he could have gone on any platform. He chose this one specifically because, yes, it's got a big reach. A lot of boxing fans and sports fans watch Simon Jordan on Talk Sport, but also because it's almost like running the gauntlet, because people see Simon Jordan as someone who's going to ask really tough questions. So by going on this show, Robert Smith is showing that he'll do something that Eddie Hearn isn't willing to do. Run the gauntlet, be asked all the tough questions. Simon Jordan in the past has accused Eddie Hearn of being a coward and invited him onto the show several times. Eddie Hearn still hasn't done it. Kalle Sauerland has been on there and answered the tough questions. Various other people. Robert Smith has been on there. Eddie Hearn keeps on saying that he will, but he hasn't yet appeared on the show. So I think Robert Smith has kind of beat Eddie Hearn to the punch a little bit there and showed, look, if we're in the wrong, the British Boxing Board of Control, then how come we're willing to come on TalkSport and be grilled by Simon Jordan and Eddie Hearn's not? So I think it's a good move from a PR perspective by Robert Smith to go on this show. Now, obviously, there's a legal process going on behind the scenes, and therefore it's perfectly reasonable that Robert Smith cannot elaborate or can't answer certain questions with much detail. That's perfectly reasonable given what's going on. But he made certain inferences. So, for example, when Simon Jordan asked him, I can't remember if it was Simon Jordan or Spencer Oliver, one of them asked him about why Conor Benn decided to give up his license on the day that he had this disciplinary hearing. And Robert Smith said, I can't say, but I have my own private views and they're probably the same as yours. Right? So he's making inferences because Simon Jordan has given his opinions on why Conor Benn did that and various other things. So it's a roundabout way of suggesting that his opinions are the same as Simon Jordan's. Do you know what I mean? Like telling you what his opinions are indirectly so he can avoid any legal ramifications. So I thought that was, quite clever and interesting. He says that Conor Benn cannot fight in the UK or will not fight in the UK unless he presents the evidence and information to the British Boxing Board of Control, the same information he's presented to the WBC. Until that time, Conor Benn won't be fighting in the UK. But of course, there is a way to get around that, as Frank Warren showed a few years ago, when he had David Haye and Derek Chisora fight with foreign licenses under the Luxembourg Boxing Commission in the UK. There's nothing under British law, at least not as far as I'm aware, unless they've changed it since then, that prevents a fight being sanctioned in the UK under a domestic, sanctioning body. So what Robert Smith said there isn't necessarily accurate, that Conor Benn can't fight in the UK until he's cleared by the British board. Now, he also answered why the British board withdrew their sanctioning of Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. on the week of the fight. He says there was a legal process going on and they weren't able to withdraw the sanctioning until that legal process was resolved, whatever that process was. Yeah, that's his explanation. He also says that the British board did not leak the information about Conor Benn's failed test to the press. And this is contradicting, this is refuting, should I say, Eddie Hearn's claim that it was the board that did leak it. So who do you believe, Robert Smith or Eddie Hearn? Again, from a PR perspective, Robert Smith is making himself look better than Eddie Hearn. by putting himself on the show and allowing himself to be grilled. While Eddie Hearn stays away. So I have to imagine that at this stage, the majority of people are going to tend to believe Robert Smith over Eddie Hearn. But just because of the behavior, right? So, yeah, I thought it was interesting with regards to this Conor Benn situation. You know, they asked Robert Smith a bunch of questions. The interview's over, half an hour long. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you go watch it. One of the things that I didn't like about the interview was what on earth was going on with Robert Smith's microphone. They appear to have had a noise gate. Those of you who know about audio or are into audio or work in audio will know what a noise gate is. And the noise gate they had hooked up to Robert Smith's microphone was far too aggressive. So it was cutting his words off all the time and his voice was going up and down. Sort that noise gate out. I don't know what was going on there, because Spencer Oliver and Simon Jordan's microphones were working perfectly fine. It was only Robert Smith's microphone that was incorrect, or the noise gate attached to Robert Smith's microphone that was incorrectly calibrated. So, yeah. If Robert Smith had been talking closer to the mic, that probably would have sorted it out. But from the distance he was at, yeah, it was all types of messed up. So it's a little annoying listening to the audio there. But other than that, it's an interesting interview. I recommend you guys watch it. They talk about other stuff here. This is one of the topics you can see them talking about. Should title fights be in the Middle East? But the majority of it covers the Conor Benn situation. So yeah, I'll leave it there. Let me know what you guys think.